Okay, so you want to own a Jeep Wrangler Rubicon. You've pictured it already. The doors off, the roof panels stacked against the garage wall, the 3.6-liter V6 idling under a badge that still means something at the trailhead, the Dana 44 axles and locking differentials waiting for terrain that would strand almost anything else wearing a manufacturer's logo. That's the fantasy, and it isn't a stupid one. The Rubicon is one of the rare vehicles left that can actually do what its marketing claims. Then you sign the paperwork. Somewhere between $47,985 and $49,740 walks out the door with you, and that's before the four-wheel drive system introduces itself to your steering column at highway speed, before the hardtop seals start weeping, before you learn what death wobble means, which nobody explains to you until it happens. The sticker is the entry fee, not the bill. Kelley Blue Book's own cost-to-own math adds another $30,323 in out-of-pocket costs over the next 5 years on a base Wrangler. A Rubicon runs higher, and that's before whatever the truck itself quietly loses in value underneath you. So who actually profits from a machine engineered to be driven into the desert and abandoned there for a weekend? The answer has almost nothing to do with the trail. There are 3 doors into Wrangler Rubicon ownership, and they lead to 3 very different financial rooms. Door 1 is the new gas Rubicon, the 4-door unlimited most buyers actually choose, running somewhere between $47,985 and $49,740 before options, powered by that 3.6-liter Pentastar V6 with a 6-speed manual standard and an 8-speed automatic tacking on roughly $3,000. This is the version this analysis follows, because it's the one actually sitting on dealer lots, and the one most owners are financing rather than paying cash for. Door 2 is the 4xe, the plug-in hybrid Rubicon, which layers a battery pack and an electric motor onto the same platform and, according to Insure.com, costs more to insure than any other Wrangler trim at $2,762 a year. There's also a reason the plug-in version comes with an asterisk attached that the gas model doesn't carry, and that asterisk gets its own chapter later, because that's where a huge amount of the real money hides. Door 3 is the used market, and it splits again, a lightly used JL generation Rubicon 3 to 5 years old, or reaching back further into TJ and CJ territory, where used Jeep stops meaning depreciated appliance and starts meaning appreciating collectible. That distinction matters more for this specific nameplate than for almost any other vehicle on the road, and it's the reason a Wrangler conversation can't just be a straight depreciation story. Hold that thought. It comes back later, with actual numbers attached. For the rest of this, the door being walked through is door 1. New, gas, 4-door, Rubicon trim, financed the way most buyers finance it. Everything downstream, the insurance, the maintenance schedule, the ambush repairs, the resale math, traces back to that specific $48,000-ish machine sitting under the showroom lights, locking differentials included, promising capability most owners will actually use twice a year, if that. The sticker price is the smallest lie the Rubicon tells you, and it isn't even really a lie. It's just incomplete. Start with the number itself. Somewhere between $47,985 and $49,740 for the base Rubicon, and if that isn't exclusive enough, Jeep will sell you the 392, the V8-powered Willys 392 for 2026, starting at $71,990 including destination, a price that's actually $30,000 cheaper than the final edition it replaced, according to the Drive. Read that again. The most expensive Wrangler on the lot just got a $30,000 discount, which tells you less about generosity and more about where V8 Wrangler demand actually sits right now. Then there's the invoice gap, the daylight between what the dealer paid the manufacturer and what you're asked to pay. On most vehicles, that gap runs wide enough to negotiate through. On the Rubicon, Automotive Addicts pegs it at somewhere between $1,200 and $2,500, narrower than almost anything else on the lot, plus a dealer holdback, a manufacturer kickback paid quietly to the dealer after the sale closes, never printed on any invoice you'll see, worth somewhere between $960 and $1,440 on a $47,985 truck. The Wrangler simply doesn't need to discount. Demand has stayed unusually resilient, which is dealer language for "we don't have to be nice to you." That resilience has a recent history. Back in 2022, at the peak of the supply shortage, iSeeCars found two-door Wranglers selling 24.4% over sticker, $8,433 above MSRP, and four doors at 20%, or $8,177 over. Above dealer markup, ADM in the trade, is dealer-added pricing stacked on top of MSRP simply because demand outruns supply, and the Wrangler sat near the top of every ADM list that year. Financing carries its own math, and it hides a canyon inside one average. The typical new car loan in 2026 runs 6.39% APR, according to Experian, but that blends everything from 4.55% for buyers with pristine credit to somewhere between 13.44 and 16.01% for subprime and deep subprime borrowers, stretched over an average term of 69.48 months. Nearly 6 years of payments on a vehicle whose own 5-year depreciation curve, coming up next, doesn't wait politely for the loan balance to catch up. Depreciation is the silent partner in every vehicle purchase, the one who takes his cut every single morning, whether or not you drove the truck that day. And here's the part nobody tells you about the Rubicon specifically: depreciation actually likes this one more than most. According to iSeeCars, the standard Wrangler loses just 32% of its value over 5 years, landing at a resale figure of $23,721. Compare that to the mid-size SUV segment it technically competes in, which loses 46.3% over the same stretch. On paper, the Wrangler is the good student in a class full of vehicles bleeding value. Here's where it gets interesting. That resale strength isn't protecting you nearly as much as it looks like it is. The loss still front-loads, the way it does on almost everything. Kelley Blue Book's cost-to-own data shows a base Wrangler dropping $7,136 in year 1 alone, then $1,619 in year 2, before the curve flattens out. And because Rubicons start roughly $14,000 above the base trim used in that calculation, the actual dollar amount disappearing in year 1 is considerably larger than the segment-leading percentage suggests. A smaller percentage of a bigger number is still a big number. For a concrete example, a 2021 Wrangler Unlimited Rubicon, 5 years old as of this writing, currently sits at $29,360 in private party value and just $24,510 on trade-in, per Kelley Blue Book, thousands below what a well-equipped example carried on the window sticker when it was new. That's real money that evaporated while the truck sat in a driveway, looking, by every account, exactly the same as the day it was delivered. The real price of this machine is the difference between two numbers, and you control neither. Not a small difference, a 5-figure one. Owning the Rubicon day-to-day is where the badge starts sending you invoices. RepairPal puts the average annual repair cost at $694, compared with $521 for compact SUVs generally and $652 across all vehicles, the Wrangler running meaningfully above its own segment. Its reliability rating sits at 3.5 out of 5.0, ranking it 25th out of 26 compact SUVs. Read that again. A truck famous for holding its resale value better than almost anything on the road is, by RepairPal's own measure, nearly the least reliable vehicle in its class. Those are two different kinds of value, and the industry is happy to let you confuse them. The severe repair probability. RepairPal's estimate of the odds you'll need a major, expensive fix in a given year sits at 16%, against 11% for compact SUVs and 12% across all vehicles. Shop visits average 0.3 times a year, in line with the segment, but when a Wrangler visit happens, the bill skews larger than a segment average visit would. Insurance is its own line item, and it isn't cheap goodwill from carriers who like the badge. Insure.com puts the average Wrangler policy at $2,396 a year, $200 a month, actually $641 below the national average of $3,037, largely because the Wrangler's blocky, low-tech interior is cheap to repair compared with sensor-laden luxury SUVs. That average hides real trim variation. A Sport runs $2,234 a year, a Sahara $2,350, and the priciest trim on the list, the 4xe Rubicon, runs $2,762. An 18-year-old driver on any Wrangler is looking at $7,859 a year, which is the insurance industry's blunt way of telling teenagers something true about physics and rock crawling. Add fuel. The base Wrangler's own 5-year total runs $5,216 per Kelley Blue Book, and routine maintenance that KBB clocks at $5,879 over the same 5 years, and the cheap-to-own headline starts looking considerably more expensive than the resale story suggests. Here's the trap. The same solid front axle that makes the Rubicon genuinely capable off-road is also the mechanism behind its most famous, most feared failure. It's called death wobble, a violent, self-amplifying front-end oscillation that can start from something as small as hitting a pothole at 45 miles an hour and escalate into a steering wheel shaking too hard to hold. It isn't one broken part. It's cumulative play across worn track bars, ball joints, tie rod ends, and steering stabilizers. And it was serious enough to trigger a 2018 recall of roughly 18,000 JL Wranglers over faulty front bar bracket welds, and serious enough afterward that a 2019 class action, Reynolds v. Maicon, FCA, cited 265 separate NHTSA steering complaints on the 2018 JL alone. According to Mopar Insiders, the JL generation collected other line items too, per a compilation of NHTSA recall filings. Roughly 14,410 2020 model turbo Wranglers were recalled for a fuel supply line that could crack under pressure and spray fuel into the engine bay. Certain 2020 through 2022 models carry a frame stud that, in a rear-end collision, can puncture the fuel tank. Manual transmission Wranglers from 2018 through 2023 are known for clutch pressure plate fractures under aggressive use. And the Pentastar V6 itself has a documented history of oil consumption and cold start rocker arm ticking that owners learn to live with rather than fully cure. Then there's the part that has nothing to do with recalls at all: water. The Wrangler's removable hardtop and freedom panels are also its weakest seal, and when they fail, a replacement hardtop runs somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 new, or somewhere between $500 and $1,000 used, according to Extreme Terrain, a bill that arrives like a subpoena, with no warning and no negotiating room, usually discovered by a wet passenger seat rather than a dashboard light. None of this shows up on the window sticker. All of it shows up eventually. The fantasy math goes like this: rent it out on the weekends you're not using it, let strangers pay down the truck, come out ahead. The real math is less generous. Turo hosts, averaged across the platform, earn around $545 a month per vehicle, according to Motor One's reporting on a 23-car host fleet, and hosts keep somewhere between 65 and 90% of the daily rental rate, with comparable vehicles in that fleet renting for somewhere between $40 and $66 a day. The Wrangler is specifically named among the platform's most popular listings, which is good news for demand and bad news for uniqueness. Everyone else with a Rubicon had the same idea. Run the generous end of that math against $2,396 a year insurance, RepairPal's $694 a year repair average, and the wear a rental customer inflicts on a vehicle built for trail abuse, and the honest verdict is that Turo income offsets ownership costs. It does not flip them profitable. The other path to paying for itself isn't income, it's appreciation. And this is where the Wrangler nameplate gets genuinely interesting. Hagerty's price guide shows the 1997 to 1999 Wrangler TJ up 168% over a 5-year window, alongside a CJ7 Golden Eagle up 136% and a Jeep J10 pickup up 151%. That's not a modern Rubicon appreciating. It's older, mechanically simpler Jeeps benefiting from supply lockup, the phenomenon where a shrinking pool of unmodified, well-kept survivors chases a growing pool of buyers who've priced themselves out of the newer trims. The current Rubicon isn't locked up. Stellantis builds these by the tens of thousands a year, which means today's truck will eventually face the fate of every other mass-produced vehicle. It gets cheaper before it gets rare enough to reverse course, if it ever does. The honest answer, per the data, is that the Rubicon depreciates gently for its category and rents out decently for extra cash, neither of which is the same thing as making money. So who actually profits from a truck built to survive terrain most owners will never drive it across? That question has been sitting unanswered since the opening minute, because this is where a huge amount of the real money hides. Layer 1 is the dealer, and the Rubicon is unusually good to them. That $1,200 to $2,500 invoice gap, plus the 2 to 3% holdback, somewhere between 960s and 1,440s on a base Rubicon, sits underneath a vehicle that, per automotive addicts, simply doesn't need to be discounted the way its competitors do. Resilient demand means the dealer negotiates from strength every single time. Layer 2 sits behind the sales desk, in F&I, finance and insurance, the back-office department that sells financing, warranties, and add-ons, and has quietly become the richest profit center per vehicle sold anywhere in the store. Industry-wide, F&I income hit a record $1,769 per retail unit in the second quarter of 2026, according to the Presidio NCM benchmark reported by Automotive News. That's the extended warranty, the paint protection, and the gap insurance, coverage that pays the difference between what you still owe on a totaled truck and what it's actually worth, sold at a markup over the somewhere between $120 and $18 a year it would cost bundled into a regular policy, all stacked onto a buyer who just spent 40-plus minutes negotiating $500 off the truck itself and walked out feeling like they'd won. Layer 3 is the one nobody markets, because it isn't a person sitting at a desk, it's the resale curve itself. The Wrangler's unusually gentle depreciation isn't a gift to owners, it's a pricing tool for Stellantis. Strong resale values protect the new vehicle sticker because a buyer financing $48,000 over 69 months feels safer doing it on a truck that holds its value. That confidence sells more new Rubicons at full price, which keeps used Rubicons expensive, which justifies next year's sticker all over again. You aren't the beneficiary of the Wrangler's resale strength, you're the mechanism that keeps it working. In November 2025, Stellantis recalled 320,065 vehicles over a battery fire risk, 228,221 of them Wrangler 4xe models from the 2020 through 2025 model years, the rest Grand Cherokee 4xes. The cause, per Top Speed and Mopar Insiders, was separator damage inside the battery cells themselves, damage that can expose lithium to open air and, in the wrong conditions, ignite it. 19 fires had already been reported by the time of the recall, with at least one person injured. Stellantis had tried to fix this once before, a software update pushed in September 2024, at no cost to owners, meant to manage the risk without touching hardware. It didn't work. 9 of the 19 reported fires happened in vehicles that had already received that patch. By the time the full recall landed, the company's own guidance to affected owners was blunt. Park outside, away from structures, and stop charging until further notice. One of those owners documented the aftermath on a YouTube channel called Jeeps on the Run. His Wrangler 4SE came in under recall code 68C, expecting a software reflash, the quick fix, done in a couple of hours. Instead, the truck needed a full battery pack replacement. Autoblog reported he was handed a loaner for the weight, a nearly new Grand Cherokee Altitude with 95 miles on the odometer, in December 2025. The replacement itself was free, as safety recalls require. The months of driving a loaner instead of the truck he'd actually financed were not compensated at all. That's the plug-in door from earlier, the one with the asterisk. The gas Rubicon most buyers choose doesn't carry this specific defect, but it carries the same corporate instinct that let a known ineffective software patch stand as the official fix for over a year before the hardware got addressed. Not a minor oversight, a pattern. Picture a normal ownership year, nothing catastrophic, just the truck doing what trucks do. Insurance runs $2,396 per Insure.com's average Wrangler policy. Fuel, prorated from Kelley Blue Book's 5-year figure, lands around $1,043. Routine maintenance and repairs, prorated the same way, add roughly $1,539 combined. Financing costs, prorated the same way, add about $750. Registration and fees tack on another $454. Added up, and a good year costs somewhere in the neighborhood of $6,182 before a single mile of trail, just for the privilege of keeping the badge in the driveway. Now picture the bad year. Same insurance, same fuel, same baseline maintenance, Plus a hardtop seal finally gives out after one too many rainy seasons, and the replacement runs somewhere between $1,000 and $4,000 per extreme terrain zone pricing. Take the low end, and the truck that quietly cost $6,182 to run now costs upward of $7,182 to. Take the high end, and you're past $10,000 for a year in which nothing more dramatic happened than a rubber seal giving up. That gap, a swing of roughly $3,000, decided entirely by the age and luck of a strip of rubber, is the difference between a Wrangler that feels like a smart, resilient purchase and one that feels like a mistake you're still paying off. Rough year. Back to the driveway. The doors are still stacked against the garage wall. The badge still means something at the trailhead, and the 3.6-liter V6 still turns over exactly the way it did in the showroom. What's changed isn't the truck. It's the arithmetic underneath it, the depreciation you don't control, the insurance tier you didn't choose, the seal that was always going to fail eventually. The Jeep is not the asset. The Jeep is the fee for admission to a trail you'll actually drive twice a year.